Welcome to Silicon Valley Successes. We interview experts and entrepreneurs to give the world access to the knowledge and experience that is here in Silicon Valley. Our mission is to create opportunities for those who seek them and help you to become the next Silicon Valley success.
Welcome to Silicon Valley Successes. So today we have Matt from Unit City, which is the largest tech park in Ukraine. We're going to talk about startups coming from Ukraine or Eastern Europe here to Silicon Valley. We're going to talk about some of the advantages and disadvantages they have. And we're going to talk about a lot of opportunities that many people at home that's watching this may not know about. So to start, Matt, could you please introduce yourself?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you so much for having me on the show. Introducing myself, let's see. Have you ever heard of a Rhodes Scholar before?
I've heard that term, but please do elaborate.
Yeah, so it's pronounced road, but it's spelled differently, R-O-A-D. So, and that means basically, I've spent a lot of time on the road. So I'm from Northern California, but I lived in Europe, worked in Europe, London, Paris, and eventually ended up in Moscow for something like over 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so was doing a lot of commercial real estate in Russia and Ukraine, and today I continue to work with Ukraine.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. Okay, and when did you come to Silicon Valley?
I'm actually from Northern California, and I started my career in tech. I was covering technology companies for an investment bank, and I rode that internet boom all the way up and then all the way down. And I got off the roller coaster at the very bottom.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, and then, yeah, that was an interesting ride. And then I decided to have a change of scenery. So I spent some time in London and Paris, ended up in Moscow, and I made, I'd say, a lateral move. So, so my career always had something to do with dollars and investments, initially technology companies, then private equity.
Okay.
So initially it was investment banking, covering technology companies, then private equity, and then commercial real estate, and did that for a good long time. And then came full circle. Eventually the real estate brought me back to technology, tech innovation parks, and I represent the largest one in Ukraine. It's something like 62 acres.
Wow.
Yeah, in the capital of the country. And here I am back in California too. So it's kind of nice to have traveled this full circle, and it all kind of makes logical sense. And you know, there's a storyline. So yeah, I'm really happy about that.
And it sounds like you've had this amazing adventure, travel in the world, and experiencing all these cultures and that. So with your role right now at Unit City, could you explain first a little bit what Unit City is and kind of the idea behind it and what the goals are for it?
Sure. So Unit City is a huge tech innovation park. Now, we hear those words here in the U.S. and we think we know what it means, but I don't think we really do. So it's one place where there are all kinds of different technology companies, and we have that in Silicon Valley, but we have to drive everywhere to get from one place to another.
Okay.
In Kiev, in Unit City, we have a central square, and there are all kinds. We have green areas and outdoor cafes and food vendors when the weather's good, and you know, it's a very nice territory, and it's huge. It's getting bigger every month. I took someone from Silicon Valley there who was asking me. He was saying, "I don't really get the idea of a tech innovation park," and as we were crossing that central square, he met 4 really interesting people just by accident. Got their contact information. By the time we got to the other end of the square, he says, "Now I get it." Okay. Yeah. So you just bring together all these great minds from different sectors, say coding schools, accelerators, big companies, R&D centers, startups, and you just mix them all up.
Yeah.
And I like to think of it as the power of proximity, or also, I thought up this term driving here, forced serendipity, like, you know, kind of make your own luck kind of thing, bring all these people together.
So in this tech park, people are living there, raising families, everything, or is it just more for those guys, they just graduate from college, they single, work, 6 months, leave? Like, what's kind of the social dynamics of it?
You know, you ought to work for us because that was a really good question.
Oh.
That's the direction we're going in.
Okay.
Yeah, so today we have no trouble attracting startups. We're just, we don't have to advertise nothing. They're always there. They want to be part of our scene. And eventually we are going to build residential units. We'll have schools for kids. You could raise your kids there. It's going to be a delightful place for anybody in tech who's raising a family, but that comes a little bit later, in a few years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then right now with Unit City, you have companies from Europe migrating to this location to set up their offices. Is that correct?
That's correct. I would say that our emphasis is on American companies, however.
Okay.
So let's back up just for a minute. So Ukraine, it's the largest outsourcing market in Europe, believe it or not. They churn out more engineers per year than any other European country. Now, it's not part of the EU, but it does have a free trade agreement with Europe, and you don't need a visa to come to Ukraine from Europe or to go to the EU from Ukraine.
Okay.
So it's getting economically integrated. Yeah. And where did I want to go after that? What was your question again?
The companies go into Ukraine, and then you said mostly, not so much Europe, but focus of America.
Oh, yeah, there was a statistic in my head. So something like 80% of the outsourcing revenue is serving U.S. companies.
Okay.
Yeah, so U.S. companies are very important to Ukraine.
Now, are these companies early stage companies, or are they more corporations? Who are they?
Yeah, I think they're big corporations, they're startups. I'll tell you which companies we're interested in. We're interested in startups that are on the verge of scaling, so they can see on the horizon that they need to hire a lot of engineers, and they're worried they're not going to be able to do it in Silicon Valley because there's just so much talent to go around, and it's very expensive here.
Okay. So with that expense, how much cheaper is it in Ukraine to hire engineers there versus the U.S.?
You know, it depends on which language you're talking about, but I would say the
Coding
pecking
language, right? Well, just to be
yeah,
clear.
programming.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. I'd say the pecking order in terms of cost, so Ukraine and Belarus will be about the same level. Russia's going to be a little bit more expensive.
Really?
But I really, yes, it is inexpensive compared to Silicon Valley. But if someone is only interested in cost, how much it costs, if they don't hear anything else, if that's all that matters to them, we don't want that kind of customer.
Okay.
Because they typically make a lot of mistakes. They're focused on the wrong things.
Okay.
I'd like to tell you what is interesting about working with Ukrainian programmers.
Yeah.
Okay. So in Asia, in a lot of Asian countries, I hear complaints from people that they hear yes a lot. and the yes doesn't necessarily mean yes. It's like the way we say like.
I hear you. I hear you. Yes, you're speaking, and I hear you. Okay, yes.
So
I've experienced this way too many times.
Okay. So I've heard in cases in which someone says, I'd like this done in 2 weeks, and I'd like these features, and then 2 weeks go by, and it's as if that first conversation never took place.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Ukraine, Russia, that part of the world, very different.
Okay.
Very different. So you could ask them to finish that project with those features in 2 weeks, and you'd get a response, impossible, or I don't think that's a good idea. So you get pushback.
Yeah.
But it's actually constructive pushback. So it's a little bit jarring coming from our culture where the customer is always right.
Yeah.
To have somebody telling you, no, I don't think that's a good idea, or that's impossible.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, the very next day, there'll be some significant process done already.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a circuitous path. You know, no, and you actually get to where you want to go.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a little.
Kind of tell me. I guess go back. Tell me about the workflow of working with Ukraine program or development team there. If you're a startup here or someone that, as you had mentioned, is on that growth projector, want to scale, but may not be able to hire the engineers here. So
Yeah.
say I'm a startup here, I have no contacts to Ukraine. What's the whole process? What does it look like?
Okay, so it depends on what kind of company you are and whether you've already worked with teams abroad.
Never worked with teams abroad. This is
Okay.
my first startup. PhD from Stanford, think I know everything, but I don't.
Okay. Very good description.
I don't know.
I know such people.
Just came up with that.
Yeah. Let's see. So in that case, I would recommend that someone on the team is in this time zone who understands both cultures. So that could be someone like me, or more ideally, it would be say a Ukrainian or a Russian programmer, project manager who has 10 years experience working in the U.S., reporting to U.S. companies and managing teams abroad.
Okay.
So quite a few benefits. First of all, yes, it's going to be less expensive because the bulk of the team is in Kiev. Two, you're going to communicate in your own time zone.
Okay.
Yeah, and yes, there is an overlap of time zones, 1 or 2, 3 hours.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, I call someone in, say, Ukraine or Lithuania, wherever it is, and they're tired when I'm at the top of my game, or vice versa. And we can never both be at the top of our games. Yeah, it's very difficult. So it's nice to have someone in this time zone you can speak to, and someone who understands their point of view and knows how to deliver your message in the right context.
Okay.
Yeah, that's key.
So that person is translating both language and culture and kind of that point of view, and that's actually more important than just that language translation.
Exactly. Couldn't agree more.
Okay.
Yeah.
But tell me about the onboarding process. So I'm a startup. I come to you. I say, I want a Ukrainian development team, and you're going to be the middle person, or you'll introduce the middle person.
Well, I'll continue to be involved because I want the relationship to be a successful one.
Okay.
So I'll never completely give up some kind of involvement.
Okay.
And the Unit City brand is really important to us. We want only success stories in Silicon Valley. So
All the rest disappear. Playing on.
Yeah, exactly. So depending on your experience level, if you have no experience managing teams abroad, I think it would be better to have a few locals, so say myself, then a project manager based in wherever, San Jose or San Francisco, who's going to interface with you and manage the team abroad. And you'd be signing a contract with a U.S. company. What else could I tell you? If you were a company that has a lot of resources and wants to hire a lot of engineers over time and you want flexibility, we could even create a turnkey solution where you eventually own a subsidiary in Ukraine. So we can create a solution across the whole spectrum of possibilities. And what's great about Unit City is that we have so many resources. We can pull them down. If you're scaling fast, we have a coding school with nearly 1,000 students, a data science school, 50 startups. So, and we know all these teams. We've seen them perform over time. So it's not as if we're giving you some people that we haven't properly checked out and vetted.
So that concludes part 1 of this interview. To find out more information, please visit siliconvalleysuccesses.com. And in part 2, we're going to continue to talk about more of Unit City, the resources, and startups from Ukraine coming to Silicon Valley and vice versa. So with that, let's start part 2. So Matt, could you please talk about a little bit more about the resources at Unit City?
So I mentioned the coding school. Let me flesh that out a little bit. We call it Unit Factory, and the curriculum we use is from Coding School 42.
Yeah.
So you know 42.
They're in Fremont.
Oh, okay. You've been over there.
Yeah, Jamie, I know the whole team.
Oh, okay.
The whole team of 8 people here.
Yeah, very nice facilities.
Oh, amazing.
And, so we have their curriculum.
Okay.
And the other, I guess the most striking thing about their program is that tuition is free.
Yeah.
So I think that's a little bit like the Cambridge University model or the Harvard University model. People are trying to get in there, into Harvard, because it has such a great reputation. 3 years of tuition-free education. That sounds great, from a
Yeah.
top school. So when people arrive on their first day, we already have some outstanding
Yeah.
minds in our, every class.
Do they think the whole university is too good to be true when they arrive, or?
Yeah, I imagine some of them are scratching their heads. How is this possible?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's stealing my code?
And the other thing that's unusual about the program is that there are no instructors per se. So teams are formed and you're given cases that resemble real life problems, and you try to solve them. And there's actually some kind of map. Have you seen that map, that labyrinth you have to work your
Yeah.
way through
Yeah, to get
before
to
you
the goal.
graduate? Yeah.
But let's go back. Tell me more about the resources of Unit City there.
Okay.
And also, let's kind of get to where we're talking about startups from Unit City come in here and maybe the difficulties that they face.
Right,
But
right.
yeah.
Yeah, we haven't had a lot of startups come this way yet from Unit City because we're still relatively young. We're, 2 years old, let's
Oh,
say.
okay.
Yeah, but we have, what do we have, 9 buildings up, beautiful office buildings. You can see the links on the website after this interview. So talking about Ukrainian startups coming this way. So one of our accelerators is focused on global startups who are interested in the U.S. market, and I will facilitate their transition to the U.S. What kind of problems do I see? What kind of mistakes are being made over and over again? Well, a lot of startups come here, and they come over here for a week or two, and they come in a big group of startups from the same country.
Yeah.
So they show up here and we are Latvian startups. It's like, and people here think, okay, that's a little strange. And
Yeah.
why is that important? And what do you do?
Yeah.
Right? So you do not brand yourself as from a particular country. No one cares here.
Yeah.
Right. Now, it's another matter if you go to, let's say, a blockchain conference and you discover that, all the good startups were from Ukraine. Well, that's a pretty powerful message.
Yeah.
But you got to let people discover that for themselves.
Okay.
So that's number one. Number two, you really need to stay here. You need someone here. And I would say not just one person, at least two. You need to have each other's back, and you need to assimilate. You need to think as like a native of Silicon Valley, and to do that, you need to break out of your community, whatever it is. If you're Chinese, you should not be hanging out with all the other Chinese founders. You need to really dive into Silicon Valley and discover it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've seen that with a lot of the groups here, Silicon Valley, where they'll send a VC over from a country and they'll just hang out with that group, whether
clique.
it's Chinese, Japanese, Korean. They never actually immerse themselves in Silicon Valley, and they never get access to the good companies because of that, or a rich deal flow.
That's a huge mistake.
What are some of the other problems that founders from Ukraine might face when they come here? Do they have visa problems, or because they're startups they're able to get those, or is that getting easier or harder?
That is a good question, and I need to crack that. I have a number of friends who are immigration lawyers, so I'm just going to hand the problem over to them. I'm not on top of it just yet, but I have not come across anyone who has been in such dire straits they had to leave.
Okay.
Yeah, and I will say this, of the Ukrainian startups or the Ukrainian founders who are very successful here, they spent some time in the United States before their startup got traction. So
Okay.
I don't know if WhatsApp is he immigrated here pretty young, Yankum, but there's a Ukrainian team in WhatsApp, and Jan is originally from Ukraine. Grammarly, I don't know if we consider Grammarly Ukrainian or Canadian, but they're Ukrainian guys. PetCube,
Okay.
yeah. I don't know how many years they were here before, and I think they got here through China actually. So that's an interesting path they took.
How many years do you think it takes a founder or someone from Ukraine to kind of get acclimated to Silicon Valley?
Well, it depends on the person, but if you're applying yourself, I would say a year. Yeah, I got acclimated in Russia in about a year.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't look Russian. I can open a taxi door and they'll speak English to me, just the way I look. But yeah, my recommendation: go to a lot of parties. Yeah, just speak, and next thing you know, you're local.
Okay.
Yeah.
So far we've talked about getting acclimated to Silicon Valley, taking about a year. The founders, when they do come here, it normally will take them a little while to get acclimated, and when they're here, they should associate outside of just their home country's group.
Oh, of course.
We talked about when if a startup team here wants to outsource their development to Ukraine, best to have a project manager or 1 or 2 points of contacts here for that team overseas. There'll be a cultural difference. There'll also be a time difference. But the cultural difference is the biggest.
Trumps everything else.
Trumps everything else. We also talked about the technological park and the benefits of it with everyone in such a community. What are we missing? What hasn't been covered so far?
One area that I'm developing is events that tie together different tech ecosystems, and obviously the one I care about is Kiev.
Okay.
I will pull in some others as well. And the time difference is difficult, but you can include startups from Unit City in the agenda for a particular event. So we have through Silicon Valley Planet, that's a group that I formed.
Oh.
And yeah, you think you're aware of it?
I'm not sure, but I can't wait to see this video on it.
Okay. Too many organizations with Silicon Valley in their names, but
A lot of those domain names are taken.
right. So we have a FinTech event coming up on corporate pilots.
Okay.
So we'll have some experienced individuals from big corporations, from startups, in the FinTech space, telling us how to be successful in setting up a pilot, what not to do. And I'd like to have a series of such events across different sectors.
Okay.
Yeah. And I will be working with my colleagues at Unit City, and they just launched their first batch of startups, and 2 of them are FinTech. So
Okay.
I will integrate them in my activities here.
So right now in Ukraine, are there fintech, blockchain? What are the developers ahead of there?
Yeah.
Or in the forefront of?
Yeah. So their strongest verticals are technological verticals, not so much market. And I just want to stress this point. So Ukraine's shortcoming today is a lack of entrepreneurial experience. My shareholder is a fantastic entrepreneur, by the way. I'm so impressed by him, I have to say.
We'll cut that part out,
yeah.
don't worry.
I'm not flattering him. I'm just so impressed. But as far as technology goes and engineering know-how, Ukraine is near the top. So that would be blockchain, that would be computer vision. Let's see, that would be artificial intelligence, that would be Internet of Things. I'm sure I'm missing something, but there are 4 or 5 that we have really strong teams in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fascinating. And what advice would you give to a founder in Ukraine before coming to Silicon Valley? Or advice you wish if you could pass on any one key thing of knowledge, what would it be?
I suppose I would try to engage in some long distance acclamation. I'd read up. I'd watch a lot of videos, like this video, for instance. I would learn how VCs do business here.
Okay. How do they do them different here than in Ukraine?
And this is a gross generalization.
Okay.
First,
We got time, don't worry.
I would say that typically in that part of the world, businessmen want to control too much. They want to control absolutely everything, their employees, and they're not capable of sharing. They're not interested in sharing. They're afraid of sharing.
Oh.
Now, my shareholder is the exact opposite of that, and that's why he's so unusual. He works through partnership, and that's how he grows his businesses and how he manages risk. As someone who's lived in that part of the world for so long, that is I can tell you that is so unusual. And it's so great to have a shareholder like that for our tech innovation park.
So an investor invested in an early stage company, is he going to try to acquire 60% of the company? Or when you're saying control it, could you go into a little bit more detail?
Well, there are a number of venture capital firms in Ukraine, and they're good, and they're plugged into Silicon Valley. So I'm not disparaging them at all. There's not enough of them. That's one problem. Not enough angels. But I'm speaking about the founders, the typical businessman. If he's not plugged into the Silicon Valley way of doing things, if he's not trying to get here, not educating himself, and he's just doing business, he just has a new enterprise, often he'll want to control everything. When he sells the company, he'll overprice it. He'll want to sell 100% and make a killing immediately. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a learning curve.
Okay.
Yeah, a cultural learning curve.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is different. How about the presentations, the pitch decks, and that when the companies come here, are they prepared? Or is that something that they have struggles with as well?
Yeah, if they're at Unit City, chances are the pitch decks look pretty good because
Okay.
we have some really talented folks running our accelerators. We've got one gentleman who spent, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years living in New York City.
So there are the
launching-
international mentors that are coaching.
Yeah, we have those. My pet peeve is that they're too colorful. They're too busy. There's just so much graphic artistry going on. I can't see the words.
Yeah. So with that though, I'd like to give you some time. How can people contact you and tell them last little bit about Unit City?
Right. Well, you'll learn so much more about Unit City by coming, and I know the majority of you aren't going to do that. So there will be a link in which you'll see our shareholder walking around the Tech Innovation Park, and there's English subtitles below, and that'll give you a great sense of what Unit City is all about. Also, if you're interested in the events, and there will be some Ukrainian startups every once in a while at these events, the site to check out is siliconvalleyplanet.com.
Okay. Can you say that one more time?
siliconvalleyplanet.com. And Unit City, unit.city is the domain name, and there'll be a link showing the actual tour of the territory.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can have both those links at the bottom under your bio at siliconvalleysuccesses.com.
There we go.
Wonder how many times we can say Silicon Valley
Yeah,
in a sentence. But with that, would like to thank everyone for watching. Would also like to mention our next guest who will be on the show, Jock, who is a social media expert. He will be talking about using LinkedIn, Facebook, and many other social medias to benefit your startup. So look forward to seeing you at the next episode. Once again, thank you, Matt.
And thank you.
Thank you from all of us at Silicon Valley Successes. We hope you found the information presented today useful in your path to success. For further information on accessing the resources in Silicon Valley, you may visit us on the web at siliconvalleysuccesses.com, on Facebook, and YouTube. Thank you. And remember, we want to help you in your journey to become the next success.